Okay, let's unpack this. If you've ever, shot upright in bed, heart absolutely hammering
Yeah.
because you felt like you were plummeting towards some floor you couldn't even see.
Oh, yeah. That feeling.
Right. You've definitely experienced what has to be one of the most, maybe the most universal nightmares.
Yeah.
That dream of falling.
It's incredibly common. And, well, conventionally, we're always taught this is about, the ultimate loss. Failure.
Losing control, right? Or maybe something bad is about to happen in your life, that kind of foreshadowing.
Exactly. A terror of collapse, impending disaster, all that stuff. But what if that whole interpretation, the one we've all just kind of accepted for, well, centuries, what if it's just fundamentally wrong?
Completely wrong. That's a big claim.
It is. And that's really the core paradox we want to tackle in this deep dive. We've been looking at some really interesting material that meticulously re-examines this really primal experience. And it suggests that this conventional reading, it's actually pretty superficial. It argues that the fear, the panic we feel when we wake up, that might just be a kind of neurological defense mechanism.
Like a reflex.
Sort of. A shallow veneer, maybe, that's masking something far deeper. A much older emotional truth. The analysis we're exploring suggests the fear of falling. It's actually a disguise.
A disguise? For what?
For a fundamental, often deeply buried longing.
Wow. A longing, not a failure. That's a massive conceptual shift right there.
Isn't it?
So we're moving away completely from the idea that the fall is like punishment. Or a sign you messed up.
Pretty much. We're exploring this really profound possibility that falling in a dream isn't about judgment. It's actually an invitation.
An invitation?
Yeah, like a deliberate, maybe unconscious attempt by your psyche to return, to find complete surrender.
Okay, surrender. Return.
Yeah.
Got it. Because the standard psych view just links it to anxiety, right? Stress about work, money, whatever.
Right, external circumstances mostly. But this perspective suggests that when you dream of falling, you're not just reacting to stress, you're actually entering a kind of sacred psychological space.
Sacred? How so?
Well, you aren't falling from safety, necessarily. It's more like you're standing on an edge.
An edge?
Yeah, a threshold. A line between here, the structured, waking self, the one doing all the performing, and not here.
And not here is the unconscious. The deeper stuff.
Exactly, the unbound unconscious. And what defines this threshold, according to the material we looked at, is its velvet silence.
Velvet silence. Okay, that specific phrase jumps out immediately. Is that literal, like you don't hear anything? Or is it metaphorical, like an absence of panic?
It's more the latter, but apparently with a crucial physical component to it.
Oh.
The velvet silence is described as the immediate collapse of all that internal noise. The chatter, the worry, the planning that defines our waking, performing lives.
Ah, okay, so it's the silence of not trying so hard, not holding everything together constantly.
Precisely that. And the sources insist the dreamer isn't being pulled down by, like, literal gravity. They're being pulled in.
Pulled in. By the silence itself.
That's the idea. It's the lure of quietude, the end of that mental struggle to maintain control, to keep the performance going.
Okay, so fundamentally, the dreamer isn't falling down towards some doom. They're being pulled into a state of, well, deep, maybe necessary rest.
That really sets the stage, doesn't it, for understanding the mechanics, the symbolism of this descent.
Right. So let's get into why falling might actually be the wrong word here. Because the sources are saying it implies gravity, resistance, that inevitable, jarring, painful impact.
Yeah, the thud at the end.
Exactly. But in this specific kind of profound falling dream, those mechanics are just suspended. The whole experience seems almost therapeutic, the way it defies physics.
It really does. If you think about a normal fall, like tripping downstairs or something, the air rushes past, right? There's friction, noise, probably screaming.
Definitely screaming. And mounting terror as you accelerate.
Right. But in what this material calls the anti-gravity descent, there's a total absence of those typical nightmare elements.
Okay. Like what?
Well, for one, you never actually scream. Your throat might try to, but it feels full of silence, not fear. And the air itself, it's not thin or cold or rushing. It's described as warm, thick air.
Warm and thick.
Yeah, like it doesn't rush past you, doesn't whistle, doesn't howl. It feels more like being submerged, maybe in honey, not like being hurled through an empty sky.
That detail feels really critical. If the air is thick and warm and doesn't resist you, that completely changes the relationship between your body and the environment in the dream, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It sounds way less like a plunge against the world and much more like an immersion into something almost benevolent.
Benevolent falling, that's a concept.
It is. The whole atmosphere seems designed to just dismantle your resistance. The material describes the air not pushing against you, but absorbing you. Yeah. It compares the sensation to water that doesn't splash, it just welcomes you in. Or maybe even more vividly, like a mother's arms that don't catch but receive.
Okay, hold on. That distinction, catching versus receiving, that feels huge. What's the difference there?
Well, catching implies saving, right? Interrupting something bad that's happening, an emergency intervention.
Yeah.
Receiving, that implies acceptance, an allowing of the process, just letting it happen, being present with it.
So it's the difference between someone grabbing you just before you hit the ground versus someone just being there, letting you land softly maybe.
Or maybe even letting you be in the process of falling without judgment. It's unconditional presence versus emergency intervention. And this descent fundamentally feels like a return.
A return to what?
To a state before words, maybe. Before names for things. Before your mind learned that falling equals danger or failure.
Like a precognitive state.
Yeah.
Before we learned all the rules and fears.
Exactly. The body in this dream state, it seems to remember its original condition, dependency, surrender. It's like a profound act of unlearning all the fear we've layered on top.
And if we connect that back to our waking lives, the ones filled with schedules, strategies, trying to be perfect.
All that self-optimization.
Yeah. This anti-gravity descent is like a direct challenge to that illusion we maintain, that illusion of self-safety. We're constantly trying to clutch the railing, right? To grip the hand, hold on to control at all costs.
We are, and the dream is maybe showing us just how exhausting that constant grip is. And here's where the perspective really flips.
Great.
The sources argue you don't just slip and leave the ground by accident. The experience is framed differently, not as you losing your footing, but maybe as the ground itself. Letting go.
The ground lets go.
Or perhaps even more accurately, you choose on some deep level to leave the ground.
So you're not being thrown into chaos against your will.
No, you're being invited into freedom, release.
Okay, I have to push back just a little bit there, though, because for a lot of people listening, falling still feels terrifying. It feels like a violation, doesn't it? If the unconscious is trying to be kind or invite us somewhere, why use such a scary image?
That's a really important question, and the sources seem to anticipate it. That initial terror, maybe that's just the ego's last gasp.
The ego fighting back.
Yeah, the part of the mind screaming that its carefully burnt performance, its control, is ending. But the sensation that follows that warm air, the velvet silence, that's the invitation.
Okay, so the fear is like the doorway you have to pass through.
Perhaps. And once through, you realize you aren't being punished, you're being invited. Invited by something older, truer. Something that lives beneath the constant chatter in your head, beneath your ribs.
The unconscious calling you home, maybe?
Something like that, offering to release you from that ceaseless, utterly exhausting performance of survival we all do.
So the fear is just. It's the hurdle. The necessary hurdle before the realization hits.
Yeah.
You're not falling from something like failure or safety or control. You're actually being pulled towards something.
Toward presence, rest, unconditional acceptance, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. The material suggests the air parts around you like curtains drawn by invisible hands. It implies this isn't random chaos at all. This fall is deliberate. It's tender, almost. Ritualistic.
A ritual of return.
A return to a state where holding yourself up, holding it all together, is blessedly finally no longer required.
Okay, so that brings us to where we're falling. If it's not down through geographical space, the sources say we're slipping through layers of memory.
Exactly, memory. This is where the dream stops being this, generic, universal symbol and becomes intensely personal, specific to you, the dreamer.
Right.
It ceases to be about gravity and becomes more like an archaeological dig into the self.
An archaeological dig, I like that.
But crucially, these aren't like straightforward chronological flashbacks. This happened, then this happened. The mind can rationalize those too easily, dismiss them.
So what are they then?
Instead, these memories manifest as really intense sensory experiences, textures, temperatures, smells. It's the body remembering, not the narrative part of your mind.
Okay, give us some examples, because the sensory details, that's the kind of stuff that really makes this analysis, stick for people listening.
Sure. You might suddenly feel the specific kind of dizzying momentum of a spinning office chair from when you were a kid.
Oh, wow.
Or that stomach-dropping thrill of a backyard swing going just a little too high, that feeling right at the peak.
Totally. Or smells. How does that work?
Well, maybe you suddenly encounter the strange, metallic scent of a specific doorknob.
A doorknob? Why a doorknob? That seems so specific.
Because maybe that particular metallic scent in your deep memory is tied to waiting. Like the doorknob turned over and over again by small waiting hands.
Small waiting hands.
Hands waiting for permission, maybe. Waiting for acceptance. Waiting for someone to finally be on the other side of that door.
Oh, man. That image. The small waiting hands. That's just emotionally devastating, isn't it? It immediately takes this big metaphorical plunge and grounds it in a real, acute moment of childhood vulnerability. Maybe loneliness.
Exactly. You aren't just observing your past from a distance, you're suddenly tasting it again, smelling it, feeling the literal texture of that old anxiety or longing.
And you're saying this sensory approach, it's designed to bypass our adult defenses, our logical minds, that whole I'm fine shield we put up.
That's the idea. The material suggests that trauma, deep emotional memory, isn't just stored as a story, it's internalized physically, as a composition within the body.
A physical composition. Like what?
Maybe you fall through the memory taste of the sour milk of abandonment, that feeling of hope that was thick and promising but ultimately soured, left you disappointed.
Wow. Sour milk of abandonment. That's potent.
Or the concentrated salt of swallowed tears. You know, the grief you choked back didn't express. The sources say it sank deep into muscle and marrow.
And that salt, that stored grief.
Yeah.
It contributes to what the analysis calls the silent architecture of your spine. What exactly does that mean for someone listening?
It means that every single time you swallowed a feeling, pushed it down, every time you performed strength when what you really felt was need, that effort built something up, physically.
Like tension.
Tension, yes, but more. The actual architecture of your posture, the way you hold your shoulders, the literal way you carry yourself through the world, it's all built around defending against a collapse that internally might have already happened years ago.
Where the spine becomes this repository for all the unspoken pain.
That's a good way to put it. And notice how the dream in this phase seems to actively filter out the rational stuff. The narratives, the adult faces.
Right, you said it focuses on absence.
Yes. It's rarely clear, recognizable adult faces you see here. Instead, the focus is on the voids, the gaps. Like the empty space where a supportive hand should have been reaching out. Or this specific hollow echo in your memory where a voice should have answered when you called out.
Oh, wow.
The dream is essentially mapping your emotional deficit. The places where support or understanding was missing. It's showing you, without needing any debate, the hollow behind the I'm fine you perfected by age 7.
That I'm fine. It's the performance again, isn't it? The heavy costume of strength.
Exactly. And the fall is trying to melt that costume away, let you feel what's underneath.
But here's the thing that keeps striking me. Even falling through these raw, sometimes really painful memories of past hurt, the dreamer still doesn't fight the fall.
Right. That's the core tension we keep circling back to.
It seems like the body, the deep self, it actually wants this surrender. It's leaning into it.
Well, maybe the sheer exhaustion of keeping up that performance, that constant self-sufficiency has just become unbearable.
Too heavy to carry anymore.
Exactly. The fall is maybe the body finally saying, I can't hold this posture anymore. I can't keep this up. It's seeking a radical release.
So that something else can hold you.
So that, yeah, maybe something older, truer, kinder can finally hold them instead of the fragile, exhausted, overly performing ego they've constructed.
And that leads to this idea that the abyss below, the scary unknown we think we're falling into, it isn't actually empty after all.
Not empty at all. The sources describe it as being full.
Full of what?
Full of everything you consciously buried, everything you decided was too soft to survive the daylight.
Like what kinds of things?
Like the silent, deeply needy child you once were, the vulnerable teenager you tried to hide, the adult desires for real intimacy and connection that got labeled too much or too needy.
So the fall isn't just a descent, it's also a reunion.
A necessary reunion, yeah. With all the exiled parts of yourself, the ones you had to lock away to feel safe or acceptable. And if we look really closely at, the architecture of our human defenses, or our waking mind, it often equates vulnerability with failure, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Being vulnerable feels risky. Weak, even.
Because we learned early on, often through attachment issues or ruptures, we learned that falling, showing need, might mean being alone, or worse, being rejected because of our need.
Right. Don't be needy. Pull yourself together. We hear that message a lot.
We do, but the dream, this falling dream interpretation, it seems to actively challenge that whole learned equation.
How so?
It suggests that vulnerability isn't failure at all. In fact, it might be the only language your soul remembers how to speak fluently.
Wow, the only language the soul speaks fluently.
So the only way to communicate real, authentic need, maybe.
Yeah.
Beyond the performance.
Okay.
So the fall, by bypassing our logical fear, the mind's terror of losing control, it gets us access to this pure underlying wish.
And that wish is?
Beneath every single terror of falling, the sources argue, is this pure, unadulterated wish to be caught.
To be caught. Okay, I think we need to handle that one carefully, especially for listeners, who might have a history of being let down repeatedly.
That's fair.
Because it sounds like a beautiful idea. The wish is just to be caught. But if you've been repeatedly failed or abandoned, doesn't that just sound like, I don't know, spiritual bypassing, like wishful thinking? Does the source offer anything more practical, or is it just theory?
That's a really crucial point, and yeah, the analysis addresses that. It's not about wishing for some external savior to swoop in.
Okay, good.
The dream, it seems, is offering the soft landing internally. The wish isn't necessarily to be caught by a perfect hero or a flawless partner.
But by what then?
By part of you that never stopped believing someone should have been there.
Ah, okay. Say more about that.
It's like the dream reveals that this internal, persistent belief in your own worthiness and the validity of your original need, that is the ultimate soft landing. You become the witness and the catcher for your own past self, the part of you that was let down.
Ah, I see. So the success of the fall, the feeling of being caught, isn't dependent on the universe suddenly providing an external safety net.
Right.
It's dependent on the adult self finally turning towards, recognizing and affirming the legitimacy of the child's original need, saying, yes, you deserve to be held then, and I can hold that need now.
Precisely. The adult self, the one who schedules back-to-back meetings to avoid silence, who smiles brightly through painful endings, who uses I'm good like it's a protective spell. That part of us is desperately terrified that if they actually let go, if they stop performing, the true, unedited emotional weight of their buried self will just be too much for anyone, maybe even themselves, to actually bear.
Right, the fear of being too much, that's a big one for a lot of people.
It really is. And what's the ultimate existential fear being addressed there when we talk about this emotional weight?
What do the sources say?
They suggest two intertwined terrors, really. First, you fear that no one will notice you're gone.
Oof.
You fear that the space you vacate, if you drop the performance, will just be filled too quickly, too quietly, proving that your true messy self was never really essential after all.
That hurts. Okay, and the second terror.
Second, and maybe even deeper, the fear that your actual emotional weight, your unedited, unfiltered, unperformative weight, is just too messy, too chaotic, too fundamentally heavy to be held by anyone, ever.
That is profound. The fear that our true reality, our messy, complicated insides, it's just too much.
Yeah.
And if anyone really saw it, they'd reject us, abandon us all over again, just like maybe happened the first time.
Exactly. And the anti-gravity descent, the feeling of it, offers this deep physical disagreement with that fear. As you're wrapped in that velvet descent, that warm, thick air, the sensation itself seems to murmur. It doesn't shout. It whispers that you were always meant to be this heavy.
Always meant to be this heavy.
This weight isn't a flaw. It's not a mistake. It's confirmation of your existence, your complexity, your depth. It's how love, real unconditional acceptance, whether from others or yourself, knows you're real.
So the weight itself is proof of life, proof of substance.
Kind of. And accepting that inherent weight, believing it's valid, that's the critical first step before you can truly surrender to the fall. You have to first believe your weight is legitimate before you can let someone, even yourself, truly hold it.
Okay, we definitely need to dedicate some real time now to what might be the most provocative term in this whole analysis, the eroticism of the fall.
Right. This one needs careful handling.
Absolutely, because if people misunderstand this, it could easily distract from the really deep psychological insight here.
Yeah.
We need to be crystal clear. We're talking about existential charge, not just physical lust or simple sexuality.
Yes, the text is extremely clear on that point.
Yeah.
This connection between falling and intimacy, it has pretty much nothing to do with superficial sexual charge or lust. It's framed as an existential eroticism.
Okay, so define that. What is existential eroticism in this context?
It's defined as the thrill, like a deep, visceral thrill of radical surrender, and also the deep, almost aching longing to be known, completely known, without any conditions, without any filters.
Okay, radical surrender, being completely known. That makes sense. And that helps explain that key distinction the sources make.
Which one?
That the desire found in this specific falling dream isn't really to be, well, the source uses the word fucked.
Yeah.
It's not about the act itself.
Right, it's to be held after.
Held after, yes. That feels like maybe the most insightful nugget in this whole thing.
I think it might be, because it redirects the craving, doesn't it? Away from performance, away from the act, and towards authentic connection, real intimacy.
Yeah, it's the craving for that afterglow. But not just physical afterglow,
Yeah.
the afterglow of profound acceptance.
Exactly. Of being seen in your absolute mess, your sweat, your trembling, your total vulnerability. And this is crucial, not being asked right in that moment to clean it up or explain yourself or apologize for it.
Just being allowed to be in that state of unraveling.
Yes. The erotic charge comes from the sheer, unadulterated relief of unmasking, of finally putting down the shield.
So the eroticism here is rooted in almost like a political and psychological act. The act of letting go of power.
Power over yourself, power over the environment, power over how others perceive you.
Yes, exactly.
And this longing, this desire for that kind of vulnerable holding,
Yeah.
it often gets tragically tangled up with our early conditioning, doesn't it?
Terribly tangled. If we learned that awful lie, the one that says love is conditional and if you want to keep it, you must never ever fall.
Right. Never show weakness. Never need too much.
Then fallen becomes the absolute most dangerous thing you can do, but also the most necessary.
Why necessary?
Because it's the only way to actually test the reality of love. Is it conditional, like you learned?
Right.
Or could it possibly be unconditional? Which means that when the dreamer leaps, whether it's literally in dreams or maybe metaphorically in real life.
Like through reckless decisions sometimes?
Yeah, or by suddenly diving into a deeply vulnerable relationship way too fast.
Right.
They aren't actually seeking chaos or control in that moment.
Yeah.
They might be unconsciously trying to recreate that original moment. Which original moment?
The moment way back in childhood, maybe, just before the protective hand let go, or wasn't there. And this time, they're trying to rewrite the script.
Asking the universe, or the other person, or themselves, will you catch me this time? Or am I just going to confirm the original wound all over again?
They're desperately, maybe unconsciously, trying to confirm that their vulnerability, their falling self, is actually worthy of acceptance. It's a huge gamble.
Wow. But the dream itself, this analysis suggests, reveals the true desire isn't even external salvation. It's not really about someone else catching you perfectly.
What is it then? The deepest wish you've probably always held, buried under all the defenses, is simply to be seen in your falling.
Seen in it, not rescued from it.
Exactly, to have a loving witness during the moment of unraveling, and maybe, just maybe, to be loved because of the collapse, because it shows your authentic self, rather than being loved only in spite of the collapse.
That requires, well, an almost terrifying level of transparency, doesn't it?
It really does. The adult who defaults to, I'm fine, everything's okay, they have to confront that small, melting child inside who instinctively knew how to surrender to loving arms before shame or fear taught them to stiffen up, to armor themselves.
And the peak of this eroticism, you're saying, happens in that pause before impact, that suspended moment.
That's where it climaxes, according to this view. That suspended moment is the absolute peak of control dissolving. Something older, more primal, takes over.
And the body relaxes.
Yes, the body relaxes. And the source insists this relaxation is crucial. It's not in defeat, but in recognition.
Recognition. Recognition of what?
Recognition may be that there's a deeper, older memory waiting to take over, a different way of being. This is the body's oldest, perhaps most sensual memory.
Which is?
The steady rhythm of being held, rocked, whispered to in that language that existed before words. The language of pure, unconditional presence, safety, belonging.
That moment.
Yeah.
It feels so powerful because it completely negates the feeling of isolation that usually comes with falling, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So it tells the listener, tells you, that even if the external world isn't there or fails you, that quiet, patient, unconditional presence is still there, deep within yourself, waiting to receive you.
Exactly. It turns the fall from a terrifying plunge into isolation into, well, an internal homecoming party almost.
A homecoming party, I like that.
And that homecoming is inherently erotic in this existential sense because it involves the full integration of the self, the surrender of the performed self to the real, vulnerable, feeling self.
Because true intimacy, real connection, requires that dissolution of armor.
It has to, and the fall is the ultimate metaphor for that necessary, sometimes scary, but ultimately liberating dissolution. Which brings us really to the ultimate function of this dream, and it's kind of revealed in its lack of a typical resolution.
What do you mean?
Well, the dream, this specific kind of falling dream, it almost never ends in that violent, ground-shattering impact we expect.
Right. You usually wake up just before you hit, or it just stops.
Exactly. It pauses. It remains perpetually suspended, described beautifully as being like a lullaby halfway sung.
A lullaby halfway sung.
The ground never actually comes because hitting the ground, the impact, was never the point. The entire purpose was the falling itself, the experience of surrender.
And that moment the dreamer stops fighting it, stops bracing for impact. The experience shifts, doesn't it? From terrifying falling into something more like pure floating.
That's what the analysis suggests. That intense isolation, the terrifying emptiness we associate with falling, it just dissipates. And it's replaced by a feeling of intimacy, company even.
Company? With whom?
With the acknowledged inner self, with the parts you stop fighting against. That's the ultimate gift of the dream, maybe. It doesn't offer concrete destinations or easy answers. It gives permission.
Permission? Permission for what?
Permission to just stop. Stop the frantic, exhausting climb of everyday life. Stop constantly explaining yourself, justifying your needs. Permission to stop being the rigid, hyper-vigilant parent of your own panic.
Wow. Stop being the parent of your own panic. That's powerful.
The sources really emphasize that this descent, this fall, it's not meant to be fixed or solved. It's meant to be felt. The second you cease fighting the downward motion, the whole dream changes shape. It morphs from a nightmare fueled by fear into an affirmation built on trust.
Trust in the process.
Trust in the self.
Trust in the possibility of being held, maybe, even if only by yourself. And the dream seems to actively call for this integration of the self, doesn't it?
Yeah, you mentioned it asks the adult to reach out and take the hand of the child inside.
Right. The one who maybe got labeled dramatic or too needy or oversensitive. The parts we learn to suppress.
Okay.
That inner child, the source of so much of that buried weight we talked about, asks the adult self to make a conscious choice.
To fall with her. To finally stop maintaining that exhausting facade of strength, which the source describes so beautifully as just a costume, worn to keep from being touched.
Wow. A costume to keep from being touched. So dropping the strength allows for real connection.
It requires a different kind of strength, though, doesn't it? The strength required to drop the performance of strength.
That's a paradox.
No.
Okay. And when the adult agrees, when they choose to fall with the child, what happens then? The weight disappears.
Not necessarily. The historical burden, the memories, they might still be there, but the dreamer feels profoundly lighter.
Lighter? Why? If the weight is still there.
Because they've stopped fighting it. They finally stopped believing that fundamental, damaging lie that vulnerability equals failure. They realize the immense effort required to perpetually fight gravity, to fight their own emotional reality. That was the real source of the exhaustion, not the feelings themselves.
So the acceptance of the fall, the surrender, that is the definition of rest. True rest.
That seems to be the core message.
Okay, so if we try to synthesize this whole deep dive, bring it all together for the listener, what's the final, maybe circular realization that brings us right back to the beginning?
It means the fall itself.
Yeah.
It was never the original trauma.
It wasn't.
No. The trauma was the painful, conditional lesson learned after an initial fall or after showing need. The lesson that said, to survive, you have to fear this. You have to fight your own inherent need for support and surrender.
So healing isn't about stopping the falling.
Healing in this framework is about learning to want the fall again, to desire it, not as punishment, not as failure, but as a necessary homecoming, a return path toward the deepest, most authentic parts of yourself.
Wow, to want the fall again. And that final message, the one whispered by the unconscious, hidden inside that childhood terror.
The whisper seems to be, you were never meant to fly, you were meant to be caught.
You're never meant to fly. You're meant to be caught.
It's the ultimate confirmation, maybe, that the greatest form of strength isn't resisting, it's surrender. And the most enduring form of love, whether from self or other, is unconditional reception. Just letting be, holding space. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so that profound shift, moving from fighting the fall to actually welcoming the descent, it really encourages us, doesn't it? It encourages you listening to stop waiting for the external world, for other people to prove safety first.
Right. Stop waiting for guarantees.
Yeah, it challenges us to witness ourselves falling, even in our waking lives. In relationships that feel vulnerable, in career shifts that feel uncertain, in those moments of genuine, bone-deep exhaustion.
To allow the fall.
To fall without apology, as the source says, and maybe even see the fall itself as an act of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the process, because maybe only by allowing the fall do you allow yourself to be truly seen and ultimately caught.
And this dream, this feeling, it's not like it just happens once and it's neatly packaged and done. It echoes, doesn't it?
Definitely echoes. That feeling can come back.
Exactly. So when that fear returns, when you feel that familiar internal clenching, that desperate need to violently hold yourself together again, the invitation here isn't to rush to fix it, or pathologize it, or even make perfect sense of it immediately.
So what should you do instead?
Instead, maybe, just close your eyes for a moment. Remember the sensation of that velvet silence, if you can tap into it. Remember the feeling of the fall that held you, rather than crushed you. And maybe whisper internally to that inner self, that child who waited by the doorknob, the one who felt too heavy.
Whisper what?
Something like, I'm here now. I didn't leave you this time. It's okay. Fall toward me. I've got you now. Let the strength of your adult self be the compassion required to catch your own inner child.
That self-compassion, that internal affirmation. That's the true soft landing we've been talking about.
That's the homecoming.
Yeah. So you are still falling. We are all always falling in some way. But maybe now you are falling in love. Falling in love with the part of you that always knew deep down the abyss was never empty. It was always full, full of you.